I wanted to believe in this redemption arc so bad. And I'm really stressed out right now. And where the actual Spren is Kaladin? I'm not going to make predictions anymore, as I learned my lesson with Way of Kings. I really love that Sanderson is giving us little novella windows. Guys, it's happening. What you are going to see in this vlog is me reading this book and giving you my gut instinct reactions, comments, and thoughts on the characters, the plot, the world building, etc. Something that I would like to make note of really quickly before we begin. I miss stuff. There have been people in my previous vlogs who have been shocked that I missed certain things. I have a really hard time processing a lot of details in order. Okay, so that is something I struggle with. So feel free in the comments to mention, hey, did you notice that like this happened? Because that's awesome. And I love when people draw my attention to things that I have a harder time like noticing myself. With that, thank you. This has been Professional Tori, and I will see you in the first pages of this book. Good morning, happy Saturday guys. So I have just read the prologue. I think that one of the most incredible things that Brandon Sanderson does is his ability to know when in a story a scene or a bit of knowledge will have the most impact. I really feel like that's a strength of his, because this prologue with Navani talking to Gavilar has been this kind of almost mythical creature character throughout most of the series. This very intimately dark scene between him and Navani that really exposes the truth of how their relationship was when he died, and her praying for his death. Whether or not that actually had any effect on, like, I think it would have happened anyway. Just the fact that she knows that she prayed for it is more the rub. And I think, like, again, just that scene would not have had nearly the kind of impact and rawness to it that it does now if he had started the series, you know, before Gavilar had died and written. Him and Navani are arguing, and we're just like, okay, well, I don't really know these characters yet, so... Okay, super quickly, the fact that Gavilar gave Navani this huge, like, slam in the prologue about how she's not actually a scholar, and then we literally start part 1, chapter 1, with Lecture on Fabrial Mechanics presented by Navani Colon to the Coalition of Monarchs, Uruthuru, 1175. I have thoughts, sort of. So first of all, the nostalgia of coming back to these characters after a year and a half feels amazing. Like, when Cal and Syl appeared in their first chapter, I got lightly giddy about it. What's happening right now is that Kaladin is fighting alongside his Windrunners against Leshwi and her Fused. Like, I know some things are scary on the ground and stuff, and there are some bad Fused that are being mean and whatever, but there's such a, like, respectful, just back and forthness to this quote-unquote fight, which makes me incredibly nervous because it's never that easy. Interesting to see Dalinar's new powers at play a little bit. That's been fascinating, this whole idea of him creating the perpendicularity and refilling everyone's Stormlight reserves is kind of awesome. Love it. Just in the first few scenes that I've been reading with Shallan Veil Radiant, I had said in my Oathbringer vlog that I was concerned about some of the wording that Sanderson used a couple of times to describe her mental illness, which at the time apparently was not necessarily intended to be DID. I will say, though, just in the first few scenes that she's been in, that I appreciate the way that he is showing Veil and Radiant and Shallan's relationship to each other and their kind of switching back and forth. I really do like it so far, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how he continues to develop that idea. And Ialai, Sadius, Shallan is just about to come face to face with her. Actually, I think it's Veil. I think Veil is out right now. Veil is about to come face to face with her. And I'm like, can we be done with Sadius? So I'm on like page 160, and I have just read the new bit where Venli is brought back in. I'm really curious to see what Sanderson does with that whole arc going through this book. I just find the whole culture of the Fused and the Heavenly Ones and all of them to be really fascinating. I really like the way that he's designed their culture. Secondly, it's really cracking me up reading these little italicized notes from Navani's lecture on Fabrials and Spren and things at the beginning of each chapter, because she's going into all these specific like metals and what they do to Spren and Fabrials. Like she mentioned, I think tin and iron and one other one so far. Gee, I wonder where I've heard that before. Also, the fact that Dalinar is pulling Kaladin. Kaladin's battle fatigue and PTSD are ridiculous at this point, and you can tell. So, like, I agree with Dalinar that he needs to, like, take a breath. However, it's Kaladin. I don't know what's going to happen with Kaladin in this book, but I highly doubt he's going to go sit somewhere nicely and be an envoy or an ambassador. So I just read the bit where Kaladin breaks down. Like, I'm not crying, but I'm very emotional right now. I just paused in the middle of the scene and I see that Adolin, Syl went and got Adolin. Move over Shallan and Adolin, and Shallan and Kaladin, and Veil and Kaladin. Everybody knows I'm here for the bromance, and Adolin and Kaladin, I love them. I've loved them since Way of Kings. Like, Kaladin needs a friend. Like, and I know that Syl is his friend too, but Kaladin needs somebody that he can open up to, and I know that, like, he has kind of hints of that with Teft and Rock and Syl, but I really feel like Adolin is, like, the closest thing to a brother that Kaladin could have. Yeah, I don't know. I'm feeling feelings right now, guys. I'm just feeling feelings, and I'm hurting for Kaladin. Okay, Syl helping Kaladin in the exam room is the cutest thing I have read in this book so far. That is all. I don't know if you can see my bookmark, I'm about 320 pages into the book. A lot of it has been talking about Fabrials and the design of Uruthuru, all of the really deep info about how the Fabrials work and the different metals and all of that kind of stuff. That's just like not my thing. Buckle up, my friend. Loved the scene where Kaladin goes to Zahel. I'll just call him Zahel for now. And tries to join the Ardents, and they spar in the bed sheets hanging on the lines, which I'm such a mom. The first thing I thought of was like when they're like ripping and shredding through all these bed sheets, I'm just like, you know, somebody's gonna have to like fix those and clean this up, boys. So I do know who Zahel is, and I know who Azure is, and some of the comments that were made during that fight with Kaladin, I was like when Zahel says, no, she fights like me, I was like, ooh. Adolin and Shallan have just taken their group into Shadesmar to go and try to get the alliance of the Honor Spren, and things are happening behind the scenes with Odium's group and the Fused and all of them. I'm kind of waiting for Shallan and Adolin to have a giant tussle with somebody in Shadesmar, which would be awesome, and I'd be here for that. And I'm guessing that the fourth ideal is possibly going to come out sometime in this book for Kaladin, which will be great. I will say one of my biggest complaints, I would say, about Sanderson relationships, characters, etc., in general, is that romance is not his strong suit. I have said that before. For the most part, I find his romances to be fairly passionless. Like Shallan and Adolin, they feel very comfortable together. They feel more like friends than lovers in many ways. And I know that, you know, Sanderson's slipping in things here and there about how, like, Shallan never lets him bathe himself after he's, you know, out sparring or whatever because she's not done with him, whatever. That doesn't, like, equal showing us passion, if that makes sense. Like, even in small gestures, it just feels very comfortable, which is fine, and that's its own thing. That's a very beautiful part of love. But Sanderson's not like a burning romantic. I have a low-grade fever and I'm feeling really sick, so I apologize for the general state of me for this update. I stopped at page 456, and Adolin just fought the Tukari that were following Notum, the Honor Spren. Like, Adolin in peril, man. Like, that is one of my kryptonites in this series. I can't stand, like, especially since now everything is so radiant based, and Adolin is not. One of the reasons why I wanted to make this update is because there is a character that I am absolutely loving so much, and she is probably going to end up in my top 10 characters of Stormlight, and that is Maya, Adolin's Deadeye. And when I tell you that I love their relationship, it's so good. And this is one of the reasons, this is just showcasing yet again, this book especially, why I love Adolin so much. I know a lot of people are kind of torn on him as far as like how much they like him as a character, but here's what I'll say. When you look at his interactions with Kaladin, when you look at his interactions with Maya, with Shallan, like, he just wants to understand people so much, and he wants to help people so much. And, you know, like, him just trying so hard to understand Shallan and be somebody that can help her and love her through whatever. I mean, it's hard, and he's open about how hard it is, but the fact that he's willing to get serious with Kaladin, like, he has a lot of, like, you know, tongue-in-cheek, oh, bridge boy kind of stuff, but he knows when to get serious with Kaladin and to call Kaladin out on his BS, and that's something that I really love about him. And the gentleness with which and respect that he is using with Maya is just like, I love his character, you guys. I really do. Like, the farther I get into the Stormlight archive, the more that I love him and his struggle with, you know, being Dalinar's perfect son, and he's kind of cracking under the weight of those expectations, and rightfully so. And it's just, like, I love all these characters so much, but Adolin just really, really resonates with me. And Maya, who I'm excited to see what happens with Maya. I'm so curious, because we all know that she's sentient. We all know it because it's super obvious. And, like, how she is going to progress with him is just, I'm so ready. I'm so excited to see where he goes with it. She's just such a fascinating concept. Like, the idea of the shard blades being, like, you know, this dead Spren, betrayed, and now Adolin is, like, slowly building that again. And it's just, it's so cool. I love it. I love it so much. So I'm gonna take my very fevery, sick self back to bed. It's PATRON. What? If it is, this all makes sense. But, like, why is it PATRON? Like, logistically, I get it, but why? Why is it PATRON? I was wondering, because, like, nobody made sense. It's like, you know, like, everybody else is too obvious. There's something I'm missing here. So Adolin just put himself up for trial in Shadesmar. The Tower of Uruthuru is being invaded by Venli and the, like, super fused. I'm not gonna lie, I was not expecting, like, okay, I was kind of expecting something in the middle, because I was like, there's no way we're gonna get through this entire book to the ending before something happened. But here's what I want to say. Adolin is so much his father's son. Like, when he basically told the honor spren, put me on trial, where's your honor? Like, I will stand for the honor of humans and all of this stuff. It was a moment that immediately made me think of Dalinar trading his shard blade for Bridge 4 in Way of Kings, and and Kaladin is gonna have to, like, protect some people, because he's, like, one of the only high-level Radiants left in the city, him and Teft. So, like, who knows what's happening? It's gonna be crazy. Alright, Liren needs to take a giant chill pill, because the way he is treating Kaladin, like, okay, it's one thing to be upset that your son did not follow in your profession, and that he went, like, kind of an opposite direction of that you did, that he's, you know, killed people in the past. I get it. I get that he would be frustrated by that. But this is getting a little out of hand. This man, like, for a while there, I was like, oh, like, maybe he's trying to help in his own way. Maybe this is gonna go well. No. Kaladin protecting Teft. This is Bridge 4. Of course Kaladin is going to protect Teft. Dalinar is gonna be pissed off when he finds out what happened. Okay, so I'm on page 644. Navani has contacted Kaladin through the sibling. I'm really curious to see if the sibling ends up bonding someone. I love how, like, Navani is just like, oh, I need to find somebody that the sibling will like, you know, want to bond. And I'm like, some of the comments that the singers and the Spren make about humans is very true. Like, Navani, he just said, like, oh, you're just gonna, like, force me to bond with. I was like, well, maybe I won't force you. Maybe I'll just find somebody you'll really like. I'm like, or you could just not. There's a disturbing lack of Renarin in these books, and I'm upset about it, and I want more of him. So, just wanted to put that out there. Hey guys, so I'm back after a couple of days. I got pretty sick and was not able to read much. think I'm on like page 750. There we go. So I'm getting actually, like, we're really on the downhill slope now, which is insane. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Fused, the singers, and their whole culture, because I really feel like this book, I feel so much more settled in the world in this book than I did in the previous three, and I think just having spent all of that time in the story and in the world and really letting it soak in and stuff has really helped me enjoy this book better, more better. When we were first meeting Venli and Eshonai, it was harder for me to like really immerse there. That was one of the viewpoints that really pulled me out of the story, I would say. But now I just find them really fascinating. Some of the parts in here that I think have really shown what I'm loving about them. I think some of the parts in this book that have really kind of showcased what I mean by that and what I like about them is the relationship that is happening between Raboniel and Navani is fascinating to me. And Raboniel is such a fascinating character because she is so, like, omniscient almost. She's not, but you get this sense that the way that she talks and conducts herself, there's such a wide spectrum of quote-unquote villains in this series, all the way from, you know, Sadius, who is just this kind of sneaky backstabbing kind of strategist, basically. And then you have Amaram, who's just awful, period. And then you have Taravangian, the pursuer, who is just like pure evil. And then you have Raboniel, who's just like, I mean, you can do whatever you want. It's not going to mean anything, but I know that would probably make you feel better. Like, it's just fascinating to me to see all of the ways that Sanderson is portraying antagonists in this series. So I just read the chapter where Yasna puts on all of her shard plate and goes out with her soldiers to fight. And, like, it was really, I think, a good moment for her character development because it shows us the more human side of Yasna. As Yasna's a very, like, composed, sure of herself, strong queen, right? And she's always kind of been that way. But seeing those little cracks in her armor is so important for her as a character, for us to see that. There's been a lot of science in this book, and I think it's amazing how Brandon Sanderson has written all of this and figured all of this out. It's honestly incredible. But I am not a science brain, so I'm like done with the like I've had enough science now, and I know that all of the science has been like pointing to all the answers to everything. But I don't have a clue why. Like, yep, we're gonna just find out what happens, and I am not putting anything together because I'm just like, cool. Well, I sort of kind of a little bit get what's going on with the Fabrials and the Spren and the different lights and all that kind of stuff. But if Brandon Sanderson is trying to give me like super subtle clues as to how this is gonna all end up through all the science experiments, well, okay. We're about to have another fight with the pursuer. I'm stressed about it. I'm really stressed about it, you guys. Like, and then like when he says, I got to the part where he attacked Kaladin by the well, because they're going to find the second node, and he, like, grabs hold of Kaladin and says, I'm gonna find the next person that your spren bonds and kill them too, and I'm just like, this guy is a little intense. I'm on page 807. I cannot believe we are already, like, 3/4 of the way done with this book. That's insane. Also, where the heck is Adolin? I don't appreciate that we left Adolin in Shadesmar, and he's gotta, like, defend his honor in front of the entire Lasting Integrity Council. Hundreds of pages later, nothing. Like, we have not had a single Shadesmar chapter. So I'm a little torqued about that because I need to know what's going on, and I was really excited about that story arc, and then it just poofed, and I'm like... But meanwhile, we're sitting down here with Navani for, like, ages looking at Fabrials, which is obviously much more exciting than hearing Adolin on trial with the Honor Spren. Dalinar, like, the idea of him bonded to the Stormfather and being a bondsmith and, like, all this stuff is cool. Dalinar is incredibly thick-headed sometimes. If he's been thinking that something was off and he can't get any scouts really close enough to Uruthuru to, like, really know what's going on, and the messages from Navani don't sound like Navani. And now finally on page, like, 824, he's like, maybe something's really not right. He's been saying that for, like, ages. And it finally took the Stormfather to be like, well, you can ride the storm and see if you can see anything. Just finished the end of part 3, where Roboniel comes in and Navani knows that Roboniel's been listening in on the conversations with the sibling the whole time. And I'm like, I knew it. She is the worst type of villain to me to read. Like, they're scary. I don't get scared by a lot of villains. Villains like Roboniel, who is just very calmly sure all the time. She knows everything you're saying. She almost knows, like, to the point where you wonder if she's inside your head. And the kind of futility that she represents in trying to resist her is just honestly terrifying. We're gonna move on to more interludes, because you know what I always want when things are really intense and I want to know what happens next is interludes. Seriously. Like, I like the little extra perspectives, but I actually find the interludes, like, irritating. I almost feel like, for me, I would go back and reread the interludes after reading the rest of the book. Because, and I realize that there are things that, like, are being shown in the interludes that matter for the storyline, obviously, but I get very irritated by them because I'm like, no, Kaladin almost died in a high storm. Dalinar just got it through his thick head that something's actually wrong. Navani is trapped. I don't care about Taravangian right now. Like, I know he's gonna do something else, and I just... So, Adolin went into Lasting Integrity on page 465. I am now on page 831. That's almost 400 pages. It probably will be 400 pages. If we even get back to Adolin at all in this entire book, which I'm starting to doubt. Maybe? I'm getting irritated by this, as you can tell. Like, I want to know what is going on over there. And it's getting to a point where I feel like it's too long. It's too long. I don't like it. I'm gonna read these interludes. At least it's Zeth first, so, like, I love Zeth. Oh my goodness. We have found Adolin. 858. Legitimately, just a hair under 400 pages later, we have gone back to Adolin. Finally. Also, can we just briefly acknowledge how awesome of a character David is? Like, I loved his chapter with his POV. It was awesome, and I really, really love how he's been progressing through this book a lot. There's a lot happening in this book right now, and I'm trying to organize my thoughts. So Maya just spoke at the trial, and honestly, that might be one of my favorite moments in the entire series. I knew that she was going to speak at some point. Also, the whole thing with Shallan and Formless and Veil integrating, essentially, was interesting. It all happened very fast. I think with Shallan reclaiming her memories and Veil integrating into her, yeah, that felt very fast. Like it's something that's been building up for this whole book, and it was just kind of, which is neither here nor there. I just personally thought it was a little fast. There's a lot of science in this, and that's cool, but I'm kind of over it, to be honest. Like, this book, if you take out all of the science experiments and sitting around talking and doing not a lot of anything, you take out like a giant chunk of this book. So for me personally, that's been a bit of a drag. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts overall about this book that I'll share when I'm done at the end. But yeah, I just want to reiterate that scene with Maya in the trial, and the whole trial in general, and how tense it was, and the fact that it's Adolin. Like, I totally feel his concern that, like, he's the wrong person for this. Like, he's not a diplomat. He's not a radiant of sorts. I would argue, personally, that he is, to some degree, because there is a connection / bond between him and Maya. So I'm really curious to see, like, what that means going forward. Well, I haven't needed a stress snack break in one of my vlogs since Words of Radiance. But here we are, and instead of a stress sandwich, I am eating a stress graham cracker. You know when you get to certain parts in books, and all of a sudden your stomach just like drops into your feet, and you feel almost sick? That's where we're at, because Navani figured out anti-void light, and right away, of course, because Raboniel is like, great, so I'm gonna make some anti-Stormlight and try to, like, unmake or kill Radiant Spren. And she's got all of these helpless Radiants in the tower. Killing the Radiants would have made me really upset, obviously, But there's just something so fundamentally evil about the fact that she's going to unmake or attack the Spren. Like, to me, that's worse. I don't know why. Because I think because, you know, the Radiants have a mortality to them where the Spren don't. Like, you kind of expect that, you know, there will be a day, like Syl said, where Kaladin dies, Tef dies, you know, far in the future, hopefully. But the idea of, like, trying to unmake or kill someone like Syl, like, there's not really a word for an evil like that. I don't know. I should probably also mention here that the reveal of the dead cryptic, or the Deadeye cryptic, being that Shallan had a first Spren, was definitely a shock, because I didn't realize that, like, a Spren would bond a human again, if that makes sense. Like, the fact that PATRON must have known or something. Maybe PATRON doesn't know. I've not figured that part out yet. But the fact that, like, Shallan has had 2 Spren bonded to her is kind of crazy. Well, as always, this is a lot at the end. Teft is dead. Fenderana is dead. And Kaladin has sworn the 4th ideal. And Navani has bonded the sibling. And Venli has exposed herself as a Radiant. That was a lot in 2 pages. I got pretty emotional over that, actually. Okay, I have to say this. I'm on page 1172. I'm very close to finishing. Dalinar in this book, I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not gonna lie. Like, he feels very just here, if that makes sense. The whole situation with Uruthuru and how he figured out that Navani was in trouble, and then when he finally found out that the tower had been taken over, it was like, oh no, well, we might want to do something about that. Maybe. And now that after he finds out that Uruthuru is okay, and it's like, oh, Navani bonded a Spren. That's great. Like, the whole... Here, I don't know if this is the right word for it, but Dalinar's entire arc through this story just feels so apathetic. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Like, he's just kind of moving from one thing to another in this kind of monotony. Like, I don't know. It's very dull, is I guess the way I don't know if that's the right word either, but that's how I'm going to describe it for now. Well, here we are. I honestly was not sure we were ever going to get here, but we did. We have made it through the entire Stormlight archive on this channel. I have read everything that exists in the Stormlight archive up to this point, at least for the next 10 minutes. until Sanderson decides that he's bored and decided to finish the 5th book this year anyways. And again, this is me literally coming fresh off the last page. I have not really given myself any time to let it sit, so this is all very gut instinct response to the book. Overall, I would say I would give this one a 3.5 star read. Of the entire Stormlight archive, there were a lot of really awesome themes in here. I feel like Sanderson was really focused on, he had some important things he wanted to say in this book, more so than the other books, if that makes sense. Like, it felt more themes than story or like action movement storytelling, if that makes sense. This book of the 4 dragged the most for me. Oathbringer dragged a little bit in some sections, but there was a lot more going on movement-wise. This was a lot of characters being stuck in the same place, following main storylines with Navani as a pretty major storyline in this book was tough for me, just because like I mentioned, I'm not a science brain, and so it felt very tedious. And I understood like the whole, there's a lot of things that Navani's experiments are leading us to, and the part at the end where Taravangian ascends and becomes odium, obviously how that happened was very reminiscent of what Navani was discovering with the different types of light and being drawn through blades into things and all of that. So I thought that was really cool. I don't know that we needed an entire book of that. Also, I will stand by my comments earlier that there is decidedly not enough Renarin in this story. Like the whole series, in my opinion. I think he's a character that's being woefully underutilized, personally. Shallan's arc in this, I liked. I did think I liked her better in the beginning than I did at the end. I felt like the end was kind of rushed a bit. I think my favorite part, if I had to pin some things down, excuse me, I'm still fighting off being sick, would be Adolin and Maya were a huge win for me in this book. Also, Teft at the end, he and Fenderana's death were really impactful and well done. And Moash, I kind of wanted the contest of champions to be between Moash and Kaladin, to be perfectly honest, but I feel like even if we don't get that in the duel itself, it's gonna happen at some point. Moash and Cal are going to have some kind of reckoning in the next book. They have to. I mean, honestly, I'd be really disappointed if they didn't, because Sanderson's been building toward that for 4 books. So, predicting that. Venli's story arc, ever since she was introduced in the series, she's another one that I don't really connect with all that much. And so the fact that like 80% of this book was Navani and Venli, I think contributes to how I felt about it, because neither of those 2 characters are characters that I particularly like or even care about, which I feel kind of, I don't feel bad saying that. I don't really care about their characters, to be honest. I do think that Navani swearing an ideal and bonding with the sibling could be cool. I was actually a little disappointed by that, because like, obviously we don't know much about the bond that R'lain has now with this little spren that's been watching him. So I'm happy about time that he bonded a spren. That's awesome. I was really looking forward to like a super powered bondsmith R'lain, honestly. Raboniel, Raboniel is really interesting. She is very evil in so many ways, and yet she just has her own brand of morality, honestly. Now that I've read this, and you guys can talk about it on the channel, feel free to go ahead in the comments and let me know, like, what parts of this book you really, really loved, resonated with, etc. And let me know, too, like, where you rank the books. Like, where does this place as far as your list of favorites within the Stormlight Archive? Do you like this the best of all four? Do you like it the least of all four? Like, where do you guys sit on how you feel about just the general feel of this book compared to the other three? I hope you guys really enjoyed this vlog. You all have been waiting for it for long enough. So thank you so much for always encouraging me to do the vlog. I know it's been a really long time since Oathbringer, so hopefully you guys enjoyed my reaction to Rhythm of War. Thank you guys so much for supporting my channel, my vlog, and for generally being awesome. I hope you guys are having a great week, and I will see you in the next video.